In response to my last two videos, I've decided to combine them. More or less what I'm getting at is a source game and a census. So I'm going to go through Gmod's top 100 maps, and I'm going to get a population for each of them. Now I won't do every single map because some of them will have a population of 0, and others are other video games, which is an entirely different subject. So I won't be doing the Star Wars maps, I won't be doing the Mario maps, I won't be doing television shows, I won't be doing realistic locations like Southside because that's just New York City, as opposed to GM New York City, which is a very abstract take on the place. But I do have an interesting queue of maps up, and I'll start with the default ones. But before we do that, we should talk about the data I'm going to be using. So the majority of the assets used in Half-Life 2 and Gmod maps are based on Eastern Bloc nations from the 90s and early 2000s. Half-Life 2 itself began development in June of 1999, where a lot of these models were first being constructed. If you look at the computers or the office props or the vehicles, they don't really scream 21st century. So as a result of that, the census data I am going to be pulling is going to come from the 90s. And because of the Eastern Bloc style and location of all the maps, I'm going to use Soviet Union census data from the 90s to come up with the numbers. But I can go over the smaller details later on in the video. I think it's time that we start going, and let's start with the good old classic Gmod construct. The first most important detail here about collecting household counts within Gmod maps is that the majority of them are going to be located within the skybox, the area that's out of reach to the players. In particular, here in Construct, every single household is practically found only within the skybox. Now, a thing that's going to be super different from my previous census videos is I'm going to be counting the frequency that buildings show up, because the buildings show up repeatedly, and they're going to make up the majority of the population. And so if I just know how many households are within a flat, I just count that flat, the number of times it shows up, and then multiply it by the number of households. It's going to be incredibly convenient being able to fly around, but sadly, unlike GTA and other games, not a lot's going to be happening while I do this. So once I more or less get all this description out of the way, I'm practically going to be just providing numbers. So while I'm covering Construct, I'm going to be covering all of its alternate versions as well that are in the top 100. Some of them are kind of weird. Those mannequins are massive. You may have noticed that the population of some of these maps are massive, and that's just because apartment vacancy was so low in the Soviet Union in the 90s and 2000s. Every single apartment in the flat was occupied by a family or even sometimes two, the smallest apartments containing as many as 112 people. So I just spent way more time probably than I should have with the random array tool trying to get a visual representation of the population of Gmod Construct. Sadly, it seems when you approach 5,000 ragdolls, no matter if they're mobile or stiff or whatever, the game crashes. So here's half of the population. Play this clip in reverse for the other half. The overwhelming number of these maps are maps that are newer than my time when I used to play Gmod. The number of these that I actually recognize is very low, and the technological skill used to make some of these is kind of impressive. Curious to think about how many of these actually see the use that were intended by the map makers. We're halfway there. So I'm going to be honest with you, one of these maps coming up I'm pretty nervous about. In particular, Big City. The Gmod Big City. A map that's so ingrained itself into Gmod that it might as well just come with the game at this point. I've always wondered what its population was, and due to Soviet density, I'm going to guess that it might be even higher than that of GTA San Andreas' 80,000 people. So I came up with a few tricks to help me keep track of what I've counted and what I've not counted. I take these big feck-off pieces of bioluminescent licorice and slap them on top of the buildings that I have counted, as a way to prevent me from counting them again by mistake. As you can see, I started off with the skybox, and now I'm counting the buildings in the map proper, which are not going to be as numerous as the ones that were in the skybox. Here I'll show the process of going over one building in particular. I start by coming up with an estimation of how many dwellings are on each floor. Then I count the number of floors in the building, and then I multiply that by the number of dwellings per floor, and that gives you your total. So in that building, there are 7 floors, and each floor has about 12 residents, and every residence on average has about 2.8 people in it. So that's 84 times 2.8, which means in total there's 235 people within that building. On a final brief note, thankfully over half of this map is business and commercial buildings, which means I don't have to worry about counting those. With that laborious task out of the way, we have a total of 73,682 people living within Gmod Big City. Just a little under GTA San Andreas' entire population. As for alternate versions of Gmod Big City, thank goodness they don't change anything, meaning their population remains the same. I find it odd what maps have made it into the top 100. A lot of these are not up to my liking. As for some, it's a mystery to me why they're in the top 100 as to others. Of all of these maps, I've recognized a few of them. And I do have to say that I'm glad to see the ones that I do recognize here. There are a few of mine that I consider favorites, and they don't even seem to be relatively close to making this list. That frickin' rat unlocked a lot of memories for me. I used to work as a ranger up in Wyoming, and even the nicest living quarters we had were infested with mice and rats. But we'd give nicknames to the animals depending on how they moved. We'd call a mouse who'd take really fat turns to make a corner a Winnebago. And then mice who'd take really zippy, quick turns we'd call Ferraris. Just a dumb memory. Back in the days where my grandest form of entertainment was making noises to describe what animals were doing. I got 23 maps to go, and I'm kind of regretting doing this project. The amount of counting is ludicrous. Oh boy, Golden City. I feel like I just finished GM Big City. This one shouldn't be as bad because I'm not including the images in the skybox. I don't care what city that is, be it Seoul, New York, whatever, I'm not counting it. I just concluded my count of GM Golden City, and it wound up being 143,702 people, thus making it the most populated Gmod map I have seen. If I were to add the image skybox, that picture out in the distance that shows the massive sprawling cities, it could add tens of millions to the population. But as I said, I'm not going to do that because that'd feel kind of cheap. Oh man, don't lose momentum. Almost there. 20-something more to go. So many frickin' skyscrapers. Please, I need a break from them. I just need to say again, of the thousands of maps on Gmod, this is the top 100. Okay, I'm guessing something didn't install correctly. Here it is, the last map, and I saved one that I'm familiar with and that I like a lot. Good old GM Fork. I have a lot of good memories of playing with my friends on this one. Tank battles, plane battles, and infantry, all the like. It's very quaint too. It's separated into 2 small towns. One up on a far hill in the skybox that's almost out of sight, and then the other one that hugs the river tightly. But this concludes our survey. I guess it's time to look at some numbers. Here are the charts I made, where I'm just showing my work real fast. Number of households I counted on every single map that I went through. In total, I went through 76 maps that were of the top 100 that weren't from a TV show, video game, or some other form of media. And through those 76 maps, I counted a total of 318,517 households. And within those households, 899 people. Practically 100,000 short of a million. I'm gonna be honest, this is probably gonna be the survey That's going to have the highest population out of any of them I've ever done. So what we can do in this case is we can divide that number by 76, the number of total maps that I surveyed, and that'll get us an average population per map, which is 11,376. And now if we wanted to do something a little risque, we can multiply that number by the total number of maps that have ever been made in Gmod. So we'll just use the workshop number for now, which, as you can see, currently rests at 39,719 maps. If we multiply that by our average map count at the moment, we'd have 466,142,184 people living within all of the Gmod maps that currently exist. Now, of course, this is a random ballpark number, and it's probably not a very good estimation because so many maps vary in size. I'd probably accept it if it was of a survey of 1,000 randomly selected maps, but that's besides the point. So there we have it. My survey of 100 Gmod maps, or more or less 76, but the top 100 Gmod maps. So first things first, thank you for stopping by and thank you for watching. I hope you had a wonderful time, and I hope I amused you at least. I'm sorry it took a minute to get out. Life has been a little crazy right now, and I'm trying to find that perfect balance between working on videos and working in real life. And as you can tell, one of my friends, Boat Bomber, helped me get some good sound equipment, and so now my voice is a lot more clear, so this is closer to what I sound like versus the other two videos. My plan is, from here on, I'm going to try to release one new video every 2 weeks. This one has fallen behind by a few days. But yeah, hopefully I maintain some kind of quality and am able to amuse you guys constantly. But thank you again so much for stopping by, and I hope you have an amazing, fantastic day.